Hi everyone, welcome to Beyond the Evidence. This is the channel where justice matters. My name is Marv. I am a true crime fanatic, and I love to dig deeper into the mysteries of unsolved cases. Join me as we search for missing persons, uncover the clues in unsolved murders, follow along with jury trials, and we'll be a voice for the voiceless. I'll share with you the facts, the theories, the clues, the evidence, and the controversies that surround these cases. This is Beyond the Evidence. I think it kicked on finally. Hey everyone, how's it going? Give me just a minute. We're trying to get the furnace restarted. I'll be right back. All right, I'm back. Welcome. Furnace is going. The house should heat up now. Woohoo! I'm happy. It was a cold night last night, and I decided to come home. Home away from home. That's where I am. All right, let's say hi to the first 5. Automobile, you're first in line. Thank you so much for coming and visiting me last night and keeping me company out in the cold. I appreciate it. I loved our talk. Jill Mosier, nice to see ya. Boston Christian, how are you? Gibbo, I'm not surprised, but I'm not there. There's my protector and my moderator, one of them. Andrea, better not do anything. Yep. Paradise City, another moderator. Nice to see ya. Gail's in the house too, another one of my moderators. Oh, Paradise City, thank you so much. Coffee for Marv. Yes, definitely need it. And Randy's in the house too. Got all kinds of moderators in here. Wow. All right. So we left off on day 12. Dr. Walla was on the stand and the defense was cross-examining her. Not a whole lot happened with that. They just kept asking her the same stupid questions and trying to discredit her because they're not happy that she was testifying for the prosecution. After that, Brad Weber took the stand. It was very short and sweet, so I didn't even have to take any notes. Basically, the prosecution came on, said, you know, what time did you go to work? What time did you leave work? We know he left work at 2:02 p.m. on the 13th, and it takes him about 20 to 25 minutes to drive home. And what was he driving? A white van. Yep, you got it. He said under oath that he was driving a white van, but we already knew that because Jill told us. So, now I can say that the defense is going to go after Brad Weber hardcore. They served him with a subpoena that day after he got done on the stand. And they're already starting. But that'll come later. That'll definitely come later. So day 13. This is the day that we got to hear Richard Allen's confession calls. And boy, was that interesting. Once again, heard his voice. But this time, we heard the actual conversations. Yeah, I'm going to get to that, Gibbo. It's pretty bad, I can tell you that. Okay, so we started the day with the prosecution admitting some exhibits into the record. And then they tried to submit 4 pictures of Richard Allen back in 2017. Now, the defense objected. And there was some things going on there where they had to look into things because Judge Gull said that they'll review it after lunch. Apparently, there was no date stamp on these pictures. And so I can tell you right now, the judge sustained the objection and the pictures did not go to the jury. So then we started with the phone calls. Nick admitted 7 phone calls into evidence. They were all on one zip drive. He had transcripts of each call that he gave to the jury members, but he took them away immediately after each call was done because the actual evidence is the video itself. So, series of phone calls, 3 on April 3rd, 2023. Richard to Janice. There's 2 to Richard to Kathy. The defense objected because the prosecution was only offering up parts of calls. So we'll see. Defense was saying that Richard Allen didn't know how much longer he would be lucid. He was losing his mind. His family was being extorted and put out Rule 106 of evidence. So, the jury came in. She did the jury oath again because they got their phones. So it sounds like they're getting their phones almost nightly now to look at emails and stuff, and it's all under watch. So they have to do an oath, and the things that they have to promise to are that they have not read or seen any material on the case. They haven't researched anything. They haven't talked to anyone, and no one has pressured to talk to them about the case. And then Brian Harshman took the stand. Now, he is from ISP, started in July 1994. He was never in law enforcement before, and he is an ISP police trooper, a master trooper. He was involved in April of 2020. He is known as the phone guy. Yeah, Greeno's been there. Yep, I know. So the phone guy, Brian Harshman, what is his responsibilities? Well, after Richard Allen was arrested and held, there was a large volume of communication to his family. And somebody had to keep track of it. So Brian Harshman volunteered and just started keeping track of all the texts and phone calls and things like that. So he kept track of everything at Westville and Cass County. Phone calls, videos, text messages. He said there was 700 phone calls. On an average, they lasted 30 minutes. Okay, so that's a lot of hours to go through, guys. The shortest one was 5 minutes, but they're generally 30 minutes long. He re-listened to some of the calls. There's hundreds and hundreds of hours of phone calls that he listened to. And these were calls that Richard Allen initiated to his wife or mother. So they played the first call, November 14th, 2022. Richard Allen says to his wife, "If this becomes too much for you, call the detectives and I'll tell them what I know." This is big because I can tell you right now, the mainstream media got this wrong. They said, if this becomes too much for you, call the detectives and I'll tell them what they want to know. That's not what they said. He said, I'll tell them what I know. Then it says, he says, whatever they want me to say, I'll say it. Tearful. I don't want you to worry about me. All I do is worry about you. And he's talking to his wife, Kathy. Hang in there. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Very emotional. He was very emotional. I can't help you. I can't make you feel better. I'm sorry, baby. Just one more thing I fucked up on. I want to see you one more time. If anything happens, I'll see you in the next life. Interesting, huh? What do you guys think about that call? Oh, God, not again, Brandon Rhodes. You know what? I'll just keep banning you. It's okay. So what do you guys... You didn't fix the mod for me. I'm sorry. I'll have to do it after this live. What do you think of that first confession call? I'll tell them what I know. Right? Not what they want to know. I'll tell them what I know. So that's huge. Okay, second call, April 22nd, 2023, to mom. Says he has found Jesus and he has found God. The call starts with Richard Allen. Good morning. How are you? He says, trying to get a hold of Kathy, but phone system isn't working today. And his mom says, well, we've gotten bad storms in all of Indiana, and they've actually had tornadoes or warnings. And she says, they may not have internet. And he says, tell her I am okay and I'll talk to her as soon as I can. Then he asks his mom, are you going to church? And she said, yes, I am going to church. And he said, today? And she said, yes. And he goes, what church you going to? And she explained to him that she started going in February. after one weekend, the van, I don't know if the van broke down or the van crashed or something. That part was hard to hear. And he says, "You've been going that long?" And she said, "I just started going and got to get God back in my life." Richard Allen is crying and says, "That's good to hear. Did Kathy tell you I accepted Jesus Christ as my Savior?" And she says, "That's wonderful. I didn't know." And he says, "Try to get a hold of Kathy and fall asleep. I haven't slept. I have a family who's going to love me no matter what. I have God. You have God. Kathy has God. We will all be back together one day. I didn't accept God in my life until March 21st, 2023. I wouldn't have done it if I hadn't read the Bible. Kathy sent me the Bible. The Bible she got me doesn't say Holy Bible on it. I accepted Jesus Christ as my Savior and God. Dr. Frank gave her the Bible. Thank Dr. Frank for saving my life." So that call was all about him finding his Savior, Jesus Christ. Then we got April 3rd, 2022. Now this is Richard Allen to Kathy. "I wanted to apologize. I did it. I did it. I killed Abby and Libby." Her response, "No, you didn't." "Yes, I did. I don't know why." She says, "They're messing with your head. Why did you say that?" And he says, "Maybe I did. I don't know why." "Oh, wait. They're messing with your mind. Did you talk to Dad? Something's not right. They did something to your food." And he says, "I think I did. I think I did." And she says, "Why do you say that? There's something wrong with you." He says, "Wish they'd kill me or let me apologize to the families. Don't talk anymore." When you listen to these phone calls, you hear him try to say, "I did it. I killed them." And Kathy immediately shuts it down. "No, you didn't. No, you didn't." I don't know if she was in denial at the time or what is happening, but I can tell you my heart went out to her in the courtroom because as she had to sit there and listen to these personal phone calls, she just cried. And I've said this before, you know, everyone's a victim in this, except for the man that did this, even his own family members. And it's just sad all around. May 10th, 11:05 a.m. Richard to Kathy. She's asking how he's doing. Good to hear your voice. Going to something you. And he says, "Nope, losing my mind. Not sure." "Are you okay?" "Yeah." "What's going on?" He says, I think I lost my mind. And she said, so Brad and he says, so Brad and Andy, I can trust them? She says, yes. Let's not talk about this anymore. He says, I need to tell you something. Anyway, I need you to know I did this. She says, what? There's no way. She doesn't believe him saying he's not well. He says he's trying to talk to her. Gonna lose his mind now. It's taken me forever. Then you get the message, 1 minute left. I'm just trying to be at peace with things. I had a dream. I needed to let you go. I have to know, you have to know I did it. And once again, she says, no, there's no way. You're starting to see the theme of these calls. May 10th, 11:15 a.m. Richard to Kathy. Hey, it's me. I need to know if you will still love me, baby. And she says, yes, I will. And everyone else will as well. He says, I may have to spend the rest of my life here. Her response, stop talking about it. And he says, I just need to know if everyone's still gonna love me. Because I may only be able to see you one last time. It's true. And she says, no, no. He says, it's true. And she says, no, no. He says, if I get the electric chair, and then I couldn't hear what was next. And I heard her say no, and then he said something. And then the next part I did actually hear, it says, if I do, will you be there for me? This isn't right. And he says, it's okay, honey. I did it. I did it. I can't stop. I killed Abby and Libby. She says, no, you didn't. Stop. He says, I'm trying to let you go. And she says, we're going to be back together. I know you're always going to love me, no matter what. I will always love you. Please stop talking. Do you guys see the theme here? Now that's not the last call, but I just want to see. The white van was discussed the day before when Dr. Walla was on the stand, and she was talking about the confessions he made to her. Let's see. Okay, so that might have been right. Like I said, where I was sitting, it was hard to hear, especially when they were emotional in the calls. I'm beginning to think you're right, Banter Lion. But he won't because she doesn't want him to. Yeah, these were in order of what the prosecution played. There was one that was out of order that was played last because they had trouble with it. I agree, Laura. She's in denial. It truly sounded like he was trying to be honest, and they just wouldn't listen, and they were in total denial. He does, CJK, but he also died to take all of our sins away, even those that commit the most horrendous crimes. If I find him in the end, he took that sin away. Now, with that being said, they may go upstairs, but they don't live the kind of afterlife that the rest of us do. I firmly believe that. Kathy is what commonly known as an enabler. We were talking about that in our little chats that we have with one another. Yes, you hit it. Yes. I would agree. Yeah, I heard that there was a lot of things that were probably deleted. Absolutely agree, Bogey. She knows the truth, but she was brainwashed and advised by Baldwin and Rosie not to let him speak of it. I think that has a lot to do with it too. Yeah, he did. He really did. It from these calls, it sure sounds like it. At some point, you're right, Miracle Hearts. Let's see. Thank you, Gibbo. Yeah, and I don't know why that is, because he even went to the warden and said he was ready to confess. But because he's got an attorney, they can't talk to him without his attorney present. Yes, she does. There is no mention of his daughter in any of these calls. Nothing. Now, I did talk to Kathy a little bit, and she did verify that Brittany has not been there. She says that Brittany has very, very high anxiety. And it's to the point where she wants to come, but that morning it hits her and she can't make it. So we'll have to see. Yeah, it could have. Yep. And it's starting to make sense. You bring up a great point. Is this part of the reason why Gull was so angry with them? And is still to a point today, even today. The daughter's doing well. She's been at home. She's just trying to get through this. They all are. Let's see. Yeah, I agree, D. Berlin. I think that she's getting some bad advice. I think he is. So now, one of the syndrome or disorders that he has, and I cannot remember the name of it, but you guys are going to hear about it this weekend, because on Sunday I'm going to do a big live and explain some things to you, okay? but it'll explain why he is so attached to Kathy and his mother. Let's see. I think Ari knew that too, but was trying to set that aside and have an honest conversation. I think his mental issues are from being ignored about some things so huge. Yeah. You would think so. She did. Yes, she did. So when we heard the day that they played his actual interviews with the police, and I was there for interview 2, she absolutely said to him, "You didn't tell me you were on the bridge." He told her he was on the trail. Nothing about the bridge. And then in that same video where she got to go in and see him, she said, "How is it that they found your bullet at the crime scene?" That could be, I'm not sure. You would think so. Laura, I absolutely see this. I absolutely see this, and in the next couple conversations, you're going to see it as well. I'm sure he does. I don't think she's going to testify. We're going to talk about that a little bit more too, because some of that came up with one of the witnesses. They don't know the truth. I don't know, Kate. I really don't know. I'm torn on this one. All I know is that she said that she's ready for this to be over. Right. She did. Yes, he did, Judy. Baldwin had his arm around him, patting his back, patting his shoulder. I can tell you that he does not like it. And I've seen the nasty stare looks he gives. Bob Mata sits with the family. And when Bob Mata is talking to Kathy and Kathy is talking to Bob Mata, Richard Allen, not happy. And the looks he is shooting over there are not good ones. All right. Now, when they were talking about this, Kathy was shaking her head no. No, no, no. But we got to wait and see. Brittany is on the witness list for the defense. We all know this is going to bounce right back into court on appeal. Too many mistakes on both sides. And the goals go. Yes. We're learning a lot about him in this trial, and we're going to break that down this weekend too. She hasn't said anything about that. And you got to remember, it was a month or two after the murders of Abby and Libby that he checked himself into some kind of rehab or mental facility or something like that. He did necessary, but there's more to that. Yep, you're going to see it here, I promise. All right, I'm going to stop there and go to the next call because we got a lot to go through. May 10th, 11:15 a.m. Richard Allen to Kathy Allen. Oh, nope, I just read that one. Let me go to the next one. May 17th, 2023, Richard Allen to Janice Allen. I heard, hey, babe, and then it was hard to hear. And then I heard, wrong phone call. That's the phone call that Nick messed up. So then he went to June 5th, 2023, Richard Allen to Kathy Allen. She says, oh, you need coffee or snacks. He says, I got money, but I don't know where it came from. And then she said something like, not really talking. Lunch? Oh. And he said, lost my mind or something. You know I done it, right? I don't want to talk about it, was her response. It's frustrating. I'm in a real frustrating spot right now. She says, no, you're in a worse spot. Or he says, no, you're in a worse spot than me. And I put in my notes, sounded like down the hill, couldn't understand most of what's said, but that part said sounded like down the hill. Pray to God, demons are fighting hard to get you. And then he mumbled, and I said, sounded like down the hill. Don't know if you guys can see that or not. June 11th, 2023. She says, hi. He says, I did it. Kathy, I did it. And she says, quiet. He says, do you still love me? Yes, I do, but you didn't do it. Why do you say that? He says, I don't want to upset you. I'm sorry. I don't know what I'm doing. I feel like I lost my mind. I'm so sorry, baby. I didn't want to do this. Honey, I'm sorry. And then he says to her, you're not going to do anything to yourself, are you? And she says, no. He says, I'm going to have to kill myself now. And she says, you don't have anything to do with it. And he says, why are you so mad at me? Feels like I'm already in hell. I don't understand what's going on. And I heard something about stop calling. He says, I'm sorry. Okay? Yes. So I put a couple notes in here and I said sense of his speech pattern. You in these calls you really get a sense of his speech pattern. Hang on. Hello? Hello?
Hey, when you hold up that your tablet, since you have a green robe on, it shows the brick thing.
Oh,
Like a
okay.
background.
Whatever. All right. Bye. Okay. So I put in here that during his calls, he's calm, subdued, solemn, using same tone, no duress. Demeanor is the same. Now that call is what I talk about when you see the manipulation, where he says, "You're not going to do anything to yourself, right?" And she says, "No." And the next thing he says is, "Well, I'm going to have to kill myself." To me, that is total manipulation of her. August 2024. Exhibit 303, report from Dr. Walla. So, in that report, he says the day what he was doing on February 13, 2017. He was at his parents' in the morning. His mother wanted him to go to lunch. He told her no. He went and bought a 6-pack, drank 3, went home, finished the other 3 cans, bundled up, and went to the trail. He laid in wait. These are his words. Laid in wait, saw the girls, and said he followed them onto the bridge. He did something with his gun, and this is when he thought he lost the bullet. He thought Abby and Libby were older, like 18 or 19, and then at the same time said they could have been younger, like 11. And then he said that took them down the hill. He was going to grape them. Ordered down the hill, saw the van, and it scared him. He forced the girls to cross the creek. Now, this is his confession again. Cut their necks, made sure they were dead, and he covered them with branches. Left so they were not seen. Returned to car. And in my notes, I put the word van with asterisks by it. This is the testimony. Who's this testimony from? I didn't write it down, darn it. Okay. So, whoever this was testifying said got a hold of investigator group and told about the van. The only people that would have known about this van were Libby, Abby, and the killer. would have been the only ones to see the van. 625 West resident. Vehicle on that private drive. He said he went and looked for reports, looked who lived there. Other law enforcement already knew that it was Kay Weber. They ran a DMV check on Brad Weber, and they found a 2000 Ford Econoline van. And they put Exhibit 311 into the evidence, and it was a picture of this van. Said he went through the reports and called Brad Weber. Brad Weber was shown to be at work at 5:41 a.m. to 2:02 p.m. on February 13th. They interviewed Brad Weber. He confirmed his work history and the van. Report did not mention van. Nothing showed or made public that Brad Weber had the van or came up the private drive. So they filed a report and submitted it for approval, and then they're looking at the report. After the interview, looked at and contacted Cecil, done analysis on LG's phone, timeline, when LG started video and ended it. And then they looked at all the photos. And then they played the BG video again. The video that Libby took. This is the 2:13 p.m. video taken. And I put a note on there. Voice is the same. Now we know that Libby's phone stopped moving at 2:32. 2:02 p.m. Brad was working. They asked him how far away he was from work to home. And this gentleman said 20 to 25 minutes away. He arrived home at approximately 2:27 to 2:30. They asked him if he listened to the phone calls, and he said many, many hours he listened to phone calls. He reviewed videos, and then they asked him, do you believe the voice is Richard Allen? And he said yes. Then the defense comes on. He says 5 years ago and 14,000 tips later. And the guy says yes. He says, weren't there many other people identified other than Richard Allen? And he said some. He said, did you talk to Brad Weber? And he said, yes, he owns the white van. This is the defense. And the witness says, yes. He said, did you look at the discovery? And he said, yes. And he wanted to know if there was hundreds of vans. And the witness says, I don't know. And he says, your theory on all of this means that Brad Weber would have to be driving that van at that time to fit your theory. And the witness answered yes. And then we got into a sidebar. And then I put Brad Weber reports from 2017. Adam Puthie contradicted what Brad Weber said. Feels different? No. One of the reports not there. There was an objection. Brad Weber is not a credible. Would timeline theory change if Brad Weber's time is wrong? And he said no. And he says, but in order for your theory to be true, the van has to be there. Once again, he said, the defense attorney said, well, didn't you say that it took 19 to 20 minutes to get from his work to home? And he said, no, I said it takes 20 to 25-minute drive from work to home. And the defense attorney says, but that's you assuming that he went straight home. And the witness said, correct, or yes. And that he didn't stay and talk to somebody on his way out of work. And the witness said, correct. And then the defense said, and he didn't stop and that would mean he didn't stop for gas. And the witness says, correct. And then they continued to attack the van and the timeline and the handgun. And all of a sudden there was an objection that was outside the scope. He asked, are you aware that Brad Weber was a suspect? Objection. Outside of the scope. It was sustained. Do you believe Brad Weber might be involved? Answer, no. Did you record your interview with Brad Weber? Yes. Did you look at the reports for Brad Weber? Yes. He said Agent Hull took the report and he did look at it. The first time looking at it, observations of R.A. Voice tone similar. And then they were talking about, the defense was bringing up the Halidol, the medication that Richard Allen is on. And the defense said, wouldn't the medication, the Halidol, impacted the sound of his voice? And there was questions by the prosecutor and a lot of objections. And then they were talked about his mental state, his psychologist. And I couldn't hear all of the question, but I heard the answer as correct. And then they said they would see him more than me. Not heard that it was the case if psychotic. Then they talked about Halidol again, and there was an objection. And the witness on the stand said that he did not know that R.A. was on drugs. And he did not check for prescription drugs that would affect his speech. Okay, so this is still that Harshman guy. He said there was a team assigned to monitor, a group of people were to monitor his access. But it was not assigned to one individual. So he took charge to monitor the calls. So he said it was an organizational issue, and he decided to keep track of the communication and all the videos and movement videos. He reviewed the behavior, his medicine, his records, and the door sheets. He received automated messages anytime Richard Allen had communication with anybody. So anytime he made a phone call, anytime he did a text message, he said he was never assigned to do this before in his career. Richard Allen says things not accurate. That's from the defense. And they're saying, doesn't he say things that are not accurate? And this guy says, I disagree with you. And then they talk about the inmate companions, that most of them are not accurate. And then they started attacking the van and confessions again. RA says lying in wait, walk behind girls on bridge, girls on south of the bridge before BG, and the answer was yes. And he said he was coming from the trail on the north side, and the guy said he could have been waiting. And they said, and you believe the gun was cycled on the bridge per RA? And they said no. And he said, and don't the ties on the bridge have big gaps? And Harshman said yes. And then they asked him, do you believe that he walked on the bridge? No. Oh, they asked him if he walked on the bridge. Before he became involved. No. Wanted to know the color, make, model of van. Then he asked, well, was this the only van on 625 at that time? Aren't there more vans in Carroll County? And the guy's like, yeah, there's more vans in Carroll County, but at the time we know that this white van was the only van on 625 North at that time. Still observing RA, still needs to be watched for his safety, especially since we're doing the trial and there's a lot more stress during the trial. They said, do you think he's any threat to anyone? And they said yes. And you visited his cell in Cass County. Harshman said yes. And they said, but this is different because the cell is bigger. There's a table in there. There's a cell attached to a common area with a shower, and it's nicer and neater. Then they asked him, did you monitor him eating his feces? And he said yes. They said, is this normal? And he says, not normal. And then he says, Richard Allen struggles to be alone. He needs attention, and he does things to get attention. Stated that Richard Allen was banging his head on the wall and that he was rolling around in his food and feces. And defense asked something, and the prosecution objected and said not in his scope to talk about his mental health staff. And then the defense is trying to state that the phone he's trying to get this witness to admit that the phone calls had significance in terms of mental state. And that because of this, Richard said, "I'll tell them everything." Then the defense started asking questions about confessions. There was many objections. Not a lot of detail, just saying I did it. And he says, "Is that generic to you?" He said it could be. And then they said, "Well, he's been in solitary confinement for 2 years. And he's not able to talk to all kinds of people." And the guy said, "Correct." And then we went to lunch. And then that call that we couldn't hear was played. And this is what it was. This is from Richard Allen to Janice. She says, "How are you doing?" And he says, "All right, I guess." And she says, "Good to hear your voice." And he says, "Did Kathy tell you I did it?" She says to him, "We're not going to discuss this. We love you. You know that. Regardless." And he says, "Regardless." And she says, "Yes." And she said, "Kathy is okay. We've been holding each other up." And then there was a part that I couldn't hear, and then I heard, "I did it." She said, "You're not in a good place. We're praying for you. Just saying you did it doesn't mean you did do it." He said, "I did it." And she says, "I think they are messing with your meds." And he said, "No, they're not." And she says, "I know you don't have it in you to do something like this." And she said, "They're messing with your meds. And we're not going to discuss the case." And then he said, "If I did do it, you're not going to love me anymore?" And she said, "I'll never stop loving you." And there was a little bit more to it after that, but I didn't catch it. And then they talked about Janice sending him letters. She said, "Did you get my letter?" And he said, "No, I didn't get a letter yet." And she said, "Well, I send you a letter every day." Oh, and then I put on here, we were comparing notes, and he actually said, "I'm just worried you're not going to love me since I said I did it." And she said, "You're not that kind of person. I wouldn't sit here." Oh, and that's when he said, "I wouldn't sit here and say it if I didn't." Some of the things that I've observed, he is very quick to anger, very manipulative. And then the defense got in there and said, "Well, you've been involved in other cases. Um, have you seen others held in jail?" And he said, "Yes." "Is it common to be monitored?" "Yes." And all of their phone calls recorded? Yes. What is his demeanor like? Calm. He's either calm or a problem. He's observed them in 3 locations. Cass County. Issues there? The defense wanted to know. Yes. Violent. RA screaming profanity. Pounding on the door. Told guard he's going to kill him. Very angry. So then we had to take a break, and the defense had to view this video, because then Nick decided he wanted to put it into evidence. We were on break from 1:30 to 3:30. They came back and had a sidebar with the judge. The judge then had to go into her chambers and view the video herself. And she decided that states 314, with objection by the defense, the video of RA at Cass County was sustained, and they will not be showing the video. Then the defense asked the witness, are there other arrests pre-trial monitored that are monitored, that have all of their phone calls monitored? And he said yes. And he said, what about their calls to the attorneys? And he said the calls and messages to attorneys are not monitored. And he said, are there cameras sometimes in the cells when monitored? And Brian said yes. And then we got to some jury questions. So they were asking about the state, the county, and the county jails. Did you listen to RA confessions? Yes. May 22nd, 2023. Yes. Yes, there were confessions before May in April, on April 3rd. Do you know how many vans traveled down the private drive? No. Per Brad Weber, there's hardly any traffic. He's the one that only goes to his house. So then they showed a map of 625 North that leads to the house. Oh, he showed on the map where 625 North was that leads to the house. It's not a country road. The gate at end of driveway. House at gate. Okay. So where this gate is, there is a house next to it, okay? It's owned by a woman and her husband. They are the ones that actually own the gate. And the gate is not always closed. There are other homes in the area, but they don't use the private driveway. Then the jury question came in as to how many vans drive down the road next to the private driveway. And he said, I don't know. Okay, and then we get to the 4 pictures of RA, and they are not allowed into evidence because they do not have a date stamp. And then all of a sudden, Nick McClellan has this packet, and he says, Your Honor, I would like to publish the Google searches to the jury. And she said, granted. We didn't get to hear anything about the Google searches. This information had to be found out by Main Street media. Because at the end of the day, every day, the media that have the media passes, they get to go look at all the exhibits. Okay? So this is what the comment said. Court records indicate that 3 weeks before Richard Allen was arrested for the murder of Abigail Williams and Liberty German, hang on a minute, he or someone else using Gmail account searched Google for best kidnapping and hostage movies ever made. The Google search history was obtained through a warrant filed by Carroll County prosecutor Nick McClellan and introduced into evidence on Wednesday. Allen has been charged with 4 counts of felony murder in the deaths of Abby and Libby, Carroll County teens who were reported missing on February 13, 2017. Let me get the next screenshot. There we go. A look at the Google search performed on Allen's technology showed on October 2022 search for a movie about a man being held against his will. Allen or someone using his device also searched for Stalker 2012, killing of a sacred deer, man held hostage by teen. Applied ballistics, Lafayette, and multiple searches for Delphi. Someone using the device also searched several times for Delphi Murders and Monon High Bridge, Stories, Wildcat Valley Rifle Club, Should I Die Now, Most Disturbing Movies Ever, Horrifying Things I Can Watch, Insidious Things I Can Watch, What is the Darkest swear word on Netflix? Most fucked up things to watch on Netflix, disturbing and terrifying things on Netflix, and a Delphi murder update from 2022. Now, even though Kathy said that she was looking that stuff up, they still entered it into evidence. All right. The daughter is on the list for the defense to testify. She hasn't testified yet. What we're being told after today, or today, I shouldn't say after today, what we were told today is that if Judge Gall denies the motion to bring back in the Odinism, the defense would have 4 days of testimony. Now, does that include today or is that 4 additional days? We'll have to find out. We all know that Judge Gall denied the Odinist theory. She flat out said today, I told you the rules for a third-party defense were very clear. You must have a nexus showing proof that a third party was there. In your motions, or you have not shown that proof. Your motions are denied. That's huge, guys. That is why she's not letting the defense in, because they cannot prove that Brad Holder or Patrick Westfall or Elvis Fields or anybody else was there at that scene in that area where the girls were killed. Now, if the defense could find some proof that one of them or several of them were there, she would have to let them put on this Odinist third-party defense. But because there's no evidence of any of them being there, she says absolutely not. And she is going by the letter of the law on the third-party defense. Whether some like it or some don't, that's how it works. Yes, I do remember that. No, she did not know that he was on the bridge. He only told her that he was on the trail. Roxy, I don't believe this for a minute, because if that had been true, that would have blown up a long time ago. So, necessary, from what we've been told, he was essayed as a child by a family member. He essayed his sister when he was 11 and started viewing naughty magazines. He has stated that he touched his daughter Brittany and 2 other people. We still do not know who these 2 other people are. No, he does not like Bob Motta talking to his wife. Yes, Laura, she does do that. There's tears. It's hard on her. Yeah. Nope, he broke off a lunch date with his mother, not his sister. I also wondered if they did a blood test on RA after he was arrested. Withdrawal from certain, can really make a person bongo. Yes. And we had this big discussion about that too, about the fact that he was a chronic alcoholic. Okay. You go from drinking constantly every day or whatever to not having any at all, and then not sleeping or eating. That can make you lose your mind right there. No more Waylon Jennings. His sister does come. I haven't heard about any affair. Even if Brittany wasn't essayed, I can guarantee you she went through a lot of yes. Especially since we know about his sexual deviations now. There's a reason he had all those knives and box cutters and you name it. Yes, I remember. I have a screenshot of that Banton lion. No, this is This has been in him for a long time. Not sure how Kathy Allen wouldn't known he'd been on the bridge. She'd seen those bridge guy flyers for over 5 years. It's called denial. Look at the BTK murder. They found out his wife didn't know anything about what he was doing. Nothing. His daughter knew nothing. These guys are like a Jekyll and Hyde. Okay? These men, narcissists, whatever you want to call them, act a certain way around their family to act normal. And then when they get off on their own, that's when the Jekyll comes out. But they act normal as can be around their families so that their families have no clue this type of behavior is inside them. Oh yeah, no, that's Kathy's friend, not her sister. Not that I'm aware of. Let's see here. He says that he's a coward. He admits it. In these confessions to Dr. Walla, he says he's a coward and he's selfish. Oh, is that what it? I know it. His stepdad has been in court. Yeah, exactly. Why are you mad at me? Yeah. But in her mind, she's not mad at him for that. She's mad because he keeps saying he did it. Hi, King Scarlet News. Yes, I have been attending each day at the trial. Some days I can get in the morning and not the afternoon. I'm fingers crossed. That's only happened a couple times. Normally, I'm able to get in the morning and afternoon now. So today, no problems. All right. Then the state rested. Now, this was the end of the day yesterday. Let me tell you, the defense, oh yeah. I wish that each and every one of you could be in the courtroom with me, seeing what I'm seeing. Because you are in there going, please pull it together, get your shit together, and do this right. And they just don't. It just gets worse and worse. So the first witness that they called was Cheyenne Mill. She's 30 years old. In 2017, she had the last name Ingalls. She was hiking with a friend of hers. She was living in Monticello. So her best friend was hiking at Grants Park. They then decided to go to the High Bridge because it was so warm out. They went to the trails there. Not sure what time left. High Bridge Trail arrived about 2:50. Okay. Parked in the grass by the trailhead, meaning the Mears lot. Around 2:50 arrived. Received phone call at approximately 2:13. And then that was earlier before they got there, and then they got there at 2:50 and she received another phone call at 3:12. The police looked at her phone call, just got out of the car when receiving call. They headed to the bridge and passed one man. When they got to the bridge, there was a man and woman at the bridge. They said hi. Cheyenne, her friend, said hi. These people wouldn't say hi back. Or the man that they saw wouldn't say hi back. They continued to the bridge. The first platform. Shelby and Daniel were on the platform. Her and her best friend walked across the bridge. They went all the way across. Very nice. Nothing going on. Not in a hurry. They took a while to get across at the end. And at the end of the south end, they got off and went to the bathroom. Hopped right back on the bridge and came back. They were taking photos on the bridge on the way back. So she's got a timestamp here on the one photo of 3:49 of the bridge. Then the second photo was the same photo without the timestamp. There was another photo on the way back that included the water in the picture. And then the fourth picture was her friend Shelby's Snapchat of the bridge. Number 5 was Shelby's picture of the water and the bridge at 3:53 walking north. And then the last picture is a picture of Shelby hanging over the platform. So what they did is they would sit on the platform and dangled their legs over towards the water. I did not do that. So photo 1 is from a Snapchat. But what she did is she took that photo and she put it in Facebook. So she used Snapchat to take the photo, but she added the Snapchat to Facebook. Second one was a full pic. There's 4 to 6 pics. She contacted police very early and said the woman was rude. Ellie wanted her timeline. She uploaded the pics to Facebook, recovered the digital information of when they were sitting on the first platform, smoking 2 cigarettes. Did you see anyone else? And her answer was only ones on bridge. Did you hear anything unusual? No. See anything unusual? No. Got off bridge a few feet on the south side. No noise, no activity, no vehicles. They didn't see anything. So they were asked, after smoking cigs, went back to the car? Yes, went to the Mears lot. There was a lady and a man together there communicating. They were frantic. The girls left and went home. They did not see anyone else. There was a moped and a car that was parked there, but they didn't see anyone walking on the country road. She dropped her friend off, went towards town, 250 to 355 Dangle, after 4 when left. Only saw a total of 3 people. Posted the trail photos and were advised that the 2 girls were missing in the comments. And the next day, everything broke. On the 14th, she saw in the news that the girls were found. And she contacted law enforcement, advised them she was there. Lady on the phone was rude. Ellie contacted her 2 weeks later. Shelby Duncan saw Ellie and called her. Ellie wants to meet with Cheyenne. She met with law enforcement when her mom was in the car. They asked the involvement. She gave her timeline and call with boyfriend. Showed them their phone and Snapchats for the timeline. Then she was asked, and I believe these were by the defense, did Ellie inspect your phone? No. Did they take any of the images? No. Did they take any audio recorded? No. She heard from the FBI 6 months later. Phone calls asking for her mom. She advised that this is her phone, even though it was in her mother's name. They told her the phone pinged on that day and time and what time, and she told them that she already spoke to Ellie, and they hung up. She heard from Ellie years later. She reached out to Ellie, blown out of proportion online, doxing. So what she said is that when this happened and she put her pictures on the internet, everything was blown out of proportion online and people doxed her and everything. And she was very, very upset at the online vigilantes. And that was objected to. And it was sustained. The jury was to disregard that comment. So she sent them a letter about the issues she was having with the people online. But she moved and she's been staying offline ever since. So this letter that they're talking about that she sent them a letter because she got married and she wanted to advise them of her name change. So she created this letter and let them know if they need her to contact her. After sending letter, Ellie showed up at the house and wanted to know if there was dates on the pictures. And if they could see the picture of Shelby Duncan on the bridge. They had the wrong person. There was a Shelby, but not by that name. Gave her Shelby's name. And this was in 2023. 2024, in the spring, she heard from Rosie. So the defense referenced shortly after passing RA and I couldn't hear the rest of it. And then I have written, R.A. and her saw each other. This is a lie. Called for help. No call needed. Wrote letter past someone accused of passing R.A., not L.E., people online. So basically, she had all these issues online with these people, and officers would not help her, and she was extremely angry about this. Okay. She said she wasn't sure exactly where she was at 3:12 when she got the call, but she pulled in and parked. They wanted to know if she was guessing on the timeline. And what time that she thought she stepped off to go to the bathroom. And they said 3:49 on way back to North Side. Sat on first platform, take and pick. 3:55 left to go to the car after smoking 2 cigarettes. And they asked her what side she stepped on to go to the bathroom, and she said the right side. Now, she had notes that she had typed up with her timeline. And she said these were typed up or written up, prepared for 2 days before her depo. And the judge actually, when the defense started questioning her, I think they had asked her 2 or 3 questions, and the judge noticed that she was using these notes and called them up there for a sidebar, and they made Rozzy take those notes from her because she's not allowed to just read off of her notes. Okay? If they want to know a time, Rozzy would need to ask her a question about the time, and she would need to say, I don't remember, I need to refer to my notes. And then Rozzy would say, Judge, can I come by the witness and give her notes, have her review them for the time, then give them back, and then answer the question. She was very upset law enforcement did not help her with the online trolling. And then I put in my notebook, witness is mute. Everything was over by then. She didn't see a vehicle on the road under the bridge. No road, and she actually said there was no road under the bridge. Well, there's not a road, but there's a private driveway, but she didn't even mention that. They took 10 minutes to go across the bridge. Timeline is off. And everything was over by then anyways. So then they had the woman that lives at the house by the gate. Come on. This woman spoke so softly. I'm surprised I got what I got for notes on this. Her name was Teresa Liebert. She lived at 625 West. Houses at the end. Brad Weber's is the last house on the left before getting to Brad Weber's lane is what she called it. She's been there for 48 years, knows the Weber family. The gate is on the property and is on there to stop anyone from trespassing. So they show her a map and she points to the house and the gate. Says there's 2 entrances. She wants to keep the gate closed during the winter. And she said that Brad Weber made an exit going out. She said 625 is on the left side. The house is open. There's houses, open field. There's an old house a long time ago. On the left, there's 5 houses, 3 at the time. On the right side of the road towards the Webers. There's mailboxes are in an area on 625. Now, this woman says that she was coming home on February 13, 2017 from town. She saw someone standing at the mailboxes. They seemed strange. Then he was gone. Odd and curious, but she can't describe him. She doesn't know what he looks like. And that was the end of that. She described to Ellie who she saw because the girls were missing. Yeah, saw somebody at 8:30 in the morning. They asked her if it could have been a neighbor, a teenager, anybody she recognized, and she said no. And I put in my notes, irrelevant testimony. No school. Could you possibly have seen a high school student? And this was a jury question. And she said no. So I don't know what the actual purpose of her testimony was, except to tell us that the gate belonged to her. It was there to keep people out from trespassing, and that Brad used it to go use the private drive to get to his house. And the fact that she saw somebody at 8:25 in the morning is irrelevant because the girls weren't even there at that time. So I'm still puzzled as to what her testimony was about. So if somebody can figure it out, let me know. Today, I took some notes. More of Anna Williams' family was here today, and the Patty family. Cody was actually in court today. Barb McDonald was sitting with Bob Mata and Kathy Allen's family. Richard and Baldwin were talking at the table. Richard was wearing a light purple striped shirt, dark pants, glasses, standing and rocking back and forth, drinking a coffee. I don't ever remember seeing him drink a coffee before. Judge arrives at 9 a.m. Jury's in at 9:04. They do the jury oath because they had their phones the night before. All right. You guys chat for a minute. Listen to this cheesy music. I must go to the bathroom. So I will be back. Thank you for your patience. Oh, let me turn this off. Okay. I'm going to tell you guys right now, I'm going to quickly go through today because it is completely different from when the prosecution did their case. Things ran smoothly, witness after witness after witness. Yes, there were some sidebars, but it's completely different with the defense, okay? It is a hot mess. Sidebar after sidebar after sidebar, objection after objection after objection. And I can finally take this off because the house is warm now. Okay. First witness today was Christopher Godey. Now, he was from the police department in 2005. He had some high school, went to high school, some college, became an EMT, went through the law enforcement academy and its courses. He does interviewing suspect training, interviewing in different ways. I'm sure you can see where this one is going. Hang on, I'm getting messaged. You are wearing bricks. Yeah, well, that's nice. I took it off. Okay, that's Andrea sending me little messages. Read school technique on interviewing. This is big. They're always talking about this. They're wanting to know about documentation and writing reports. Reports need to be accurate to use in proceedings and be accurate. 2014 FBI Grit Task Force he was on. That was a gang task force, did kidnappings, violent crimes, and he's still doing that. And he started in 2014. He was with ISP Maryville, police crimes, and others. Alan Polk is another person that worked with him. He assisted with the Abby and Libby investigation and conducted canvas interviews. So they brought him on there. He went to the command post and they would assign him an interview. And him and Polk would go do these interviews. They did approximately 10 or maybe a few more interviews. They worked the case for a couple weeks and then maybe a few days after that couple weeks. He said about 14 to 21 days. And they did this full time. They spoke to Brad Weber. When they spoke to him, he said he went home. And then they provided him with a 302 report. Exhibit WW. And the prosecutor said, or no, they did not write he did not write the report. And wanted to know if reading the report refreshed his memory. What they said is refresh your recollection. And he said yes. And then he said, did you speak to Brad Weber on February 13, 2017? Said he went home, doesn't remember anything else, and the report doesn't change his memory. So basically, what this is all about is the defense is trying to impeach Brad Weber to say he was not home at 2:30. No questions for prosecutor or jury. So what the defense is saying is that somewhere in some report, they read that Brad Weber said that he did not go home right away, that he went to clean out ATM machines. Where they got this from, we're not sure. But since they can't do the third party Odinist, they're going to attack Brad Weber. Then they bring on Dr. Dina Wagner, I believe. Now, this woman they brought on to impeach some of the things that Dr. Wallace said. This is one of Dr. Wallace's supervisors. Okay. I'm not going to go through her history. Basically, what she says is that she works with the state and they contract vendors and get employees from those vendors. She oversees the contract. She was familiar generally with Richard Allen. Dr. Waller was providing care contracted by the third party Centurion, and she works closely with Dr. Waller's boss. That's why this woman is considered one of Dr. Waller's superiors. She said she would participate in some care. Now, I'm not going to go through all my notes on this because I'm going to tell you right now, this woman was the best defense witness for the prosecution. Okay? Here's what her testimony outlined. They hammered her on should a person who's been confined in solitary confinement be in solitary confinement that long. She stated that normally it's 30 days. Okay, but that is for a person that is actually incarcerated that's been found guilty. She said that after the 30 days, they're sent to a mental hospital normally. She also said that the longer they are in confinement, they could cause more mental health damage. Could cause it, right? It's to be expected. If you're monitored 24/7, sometimes things are going to go wrong in your head. You have no privacy, no nothing at all. She said that he was transferred and was housed in similar units. She hasn't met him, not part of where he went, and didn't know who made that decision to send him there. There's 3 mental health facilities in Indiana. Dr. and Walla did inform them of her personal interest in this case after Richard Allen came there. In 2022, Dr. Walla did go to them and advocate for the personal visits with Kathy. And this woman, did not know a lot about the case. Since Dr. Walla was a true crime fan, she recommended podcasts that this woman could go listen to learn about the case against Richard Allen. And she was aware that Dr. Walla went and visited the site before Richard Allen arrived there. And she says if she had gone to visit the site while working with Richard Allen, because he was there, it would be unusual. But in this case, she did it before Richard Allen came. Then we had our first sidebar. And I put in here in my notes, I said, witnesses for defense are hostile towards the defense. It's weird. They just say what they have to say, what they saw, and they do not offer up any additional information. They talked about his classification being for safety. She stated he was assessed before getting there. He was assessed with a D code at the time. And that they assessed him that way so that he could get benefits and individual personal care. She said the safekeepers were not sure of the criminal history. They go to them because jail can't hold them. So she's talking about other pre-detained trial individuals like Richard Allen. There are people that go to these prisons other than Richard Allen. And the reason is because the jails can't hold them or care for them. So Richard Allen is not the only pre-trial detainee to go to a prison. She says she doesn't know why he was placed there, that he was threatened by offenders at the jail, that she was aware that the camera was on at all times and monitored every move. She was concerned about the video being on constantly and asked them to remove it for privacy. She was worried about his depression and did not watch any of the videos because that was Dr. Walla's job. She said it can be dangerous to hold a person in confinement. No more damning than being in jail, though. Other reports may say it's worse, but there's no proof of it. Strict policies for confinement. Mental health is normally 30 days confinement. Yes, she believes RA was mentally ill and should not have been held for more than 30 days. Said he could still be harmed while watched by a safe keeper. And then she said he met criteria for ASP disabled. I'm not sure what that meant. And then they asked her, segregation could lead to additional issues. She said yes. Mental health monitoring, check-in, and doing daily tasks. Yes. Therapeutic intervention, restricted housing, monitored, mainly done out of cell therapy. So basically, she believed continued seclusion could harm RA. Could. Not definitely, but could. She said while on suicidal watch, he should be visited every day. Daily visits and monitoring. They're building a new jail, and that was objected to because it was out of scope. She said that her job was to answer questions, be in a supervisory role, and that she did not treat Richard Allen. And then they talked about designation and privileges in the mental health unit. And should RA have this? And she said no. Then there was another sidebar. Prosecution asked her, "Are you familiar with the assessment?" Yes. He's not labeled as seriously mental ill at the time. The first contact was April 2023. Dr. Wall advocating for visits with wife. She said in 2023, okay, contacted her advocating and stated that he should be allowed to visit with his wife in person. This was decided with the supervisors, and she talked about his symptoms and the fact that they thought he was faking. There was a multiple disciplinary team to assess him to see if he was faking. He said he became mad, wasn't sleeping, and his symptoms got worse. So they voluntarily medicated him. So it got worse, and he was not showering or eating and wasn't really caring for himself. They were concerned about the faking, symptoms severe, but they said the symptoms were severe enough and unlikely to stop and recommended medication. This is where the Holodoc came in, used for people with psychosis, targets symptoms, and reoccurring ADLs. For safety, primarily goal is his safety. So they provided treatment. Then she was asked, when was he classified as severely mental ill? Objection, sidebar, sustained, question not answered. And then they started asking about some major disorder, and there was an objection again, and it was sustained. The jury asked the following questions. Does DOC replace safekeepers in general population? Yes. Could it be possible he was faking symptoms so he wouldn't be moved to the populated areas where he could be harmed? And she said it's possible. Is it hard to tell if they're psychotic and he was confessing to things he did or didn't do? And that had to do with because they thought he was faking it. And she said yes. He makes statements by mental health speaking during psychosis. They are not living in reality. If it's a story, so she's explaining to us psychosis and when they're faking. She said when they make it a story, they know they're faking, right? What is a story? Well, I went to the lunch line and they didn't have apples. So I asked them for grapes and they wouldn't give me any. And it's a detailed story. That's how they know they're faking. And she said the story is all over the place. Then they asked her about if he was assessed for delirium. And she said yes. And they asked her what the outcome was, and she said negative. What would the process be for safekeeper if he was an actual inmate? She said the same. And they asked, what is your primary obligation to a pre-trial detainee? She said it's the same to everyone. They are treated the same as pre or post conviction. Then the defense calls Max Weber. Max Weber is the individual that has been helping them in the courtroom with clerical things. So he gets on there and says he's got a bachelor's degree. He's Rozzy's employee for 2 years. He's got a legal internship. In November of 2022, he began on the case. One of his primary responsibilities is to review the communication of Richard Allen for the defense. So we get into the defense team asking him questions. And once again, the questions are not formed in the correct manner. So there are tons of objections by the state, leading the witness. The judge even got fed up and said, you must ask the questions in the right way. They would continually try to re-ask the question and still get it wrong. It was so frustrating. So basically what Max did is he compiled his own set of videos from the footage that they got from the discovery. And what they wanted to do was show a chronological time period with the video sped up, showing what Richard Allen was like when he first came in, and it was going to be 2 different views. It was going to be of him in his cell, and then him being transported around the facility. Okay? Well, this became a complete mess. So, they're talking about how when they called it traveling footage, when he's being moved from his cell to another place, right? There's no audio on these. It's only video. And it's called a movement video. So they were given a date and a range of time on the discovery. You can see when the files were viewed or modified. And what they wanted to do was they wanted to pick the 15th day of every month from 8 to 2 p.m. and show it to the jury. And then they wanted to specifically narrow down and show them April, May, June, and July, because this is the climax of when his mental health really deteriorated. So then they got into talking about how they were breaking this down into exhibits. And there was a big sidebar. And I put prosecution's doing a great job with objections and sidebars, getting testimony for non-relevant things thrown out. Razi's doing most of the lawyering for the defense, questioning witnesses, arguing sidebars. Baldwin goes up for sidebars, but is mostly sitting by Alan. And I said, and I put this in here mainly for myself, can't talk during sidebars because bailiff said it picks it up on the recording for clerk. Got yelled at this morning. The whole galley did. And I said, Nick is really arguing in sidebar about defense videos. Baldwin talking to RA. RA shaking head no. Jury looks bored. We all were. So originally, she said anything with audio is disallowed because it's hearsay, and that they could only show videos from April, May, June, and July. And then we took a break for 15 minutes. And I noticed that Kathy Allen did not come back from the first break. I don't think she wanted to see these videos. We come back from break, there's a sidebar. And it's lengthy. And then they're talking about how do they know if the videos they're going to show for April, March, June, July are really for that month. And Max says, well, that's what on the file folder into the discovery, that's what it says. And Nick says, well, how did you determine the time frame? How'd you read the files for the discovery? Did you watch to get some dates? And he said some could be confirmed with the timestamp. The camcorder timestamps and fine markers on timestamps. Not all had timestamps based on folder. And he said, and this was in the discovery. He says, yes. And he said, do any of these videos come before or after this time period? And then there was another lengthy sidebar and lunch. So basically, we come back and Judge Gull finally says, while you're trying to figure this out and see if these videos are from this time period, you need to take this witness off the stand and put up your next witness because we're just going to keep going. And you can recall Max once you get everything straightened out. So that's what they did. Max came down. Brad Heath comes up. Brad Heath lives just outside Delphi. He's 70 years old and retired. He worked for Reliable Exterminator Pest Control. Now, if you know anything about the case, you know what we've heard about Brad Heath, right? Said he was working in 2017. He had 7 customers. And some were monthly or bi-monthly. That day, he was at the Andersons in the afternoon, west of Delphi, in the morning. He went to the map and showed them some areas. The Freedom Bridge, the Anderson place, the warehouse Anderson building. And then he called another building a small pack building. He said he was there on 2/13/2017 to service the pest station. His first scan was done at 1:43 p.m. and his last scan was done at 2:06. Then they put in an exhibit of AAA. This is the records of his scans at the rodent stations, and it gives the times and his notes. He said he requested these documents because he wasn't sure of the times, and he knew that would be on this document along with any notes he had. And they asked him, "Why did you recover this document?" And he said, "Because of the vehicle I saw at 8:45 a.m. and it was still in the same location at the CPS building. And he's showing on a map where he went and where he saw this car at. He said it was parked off the road on the west side, 2 feet in. He said it was an older dark blue and it was out of place. He worked and came back from the north down to the Andersons, and the same vehicle was parked there. When he came back between 143 and 206 is when he saw this. He said he was not contacted in February of 2017 by law enforcement. 1 week later, he went in and talked to law enforcement about what he saw. He said he talked to law enforcement a few times. He contacted them. Saw cars several times. So what he's saying is that he saw this car that he thought he saw parked several times, and at the one time he was watching a movie, and it was close, but it wasn't the exact car. He said it was late 80s, early 90s, and he reported it to LE. Exhibit BBB was shown because he couldn't recall some details. And this was a picture, and they asked, "Does this photo look like the vehicle?" And he says, "Yes. It's got the same shape, 4 doors, and blocking C." So the prosecutor says, "Does this photo accurately reflect 150 yards away?" And he says, "As close as I can." So they're asking if it accurately reflects. And he says, "As close as I can." Defense comes out. CPS lot vehicles. He says, "Were there any other vehicles in the CPS lot?" No. But he said there could have been, but he was not paying attention. Hoosier Harvest Lane side of vehicle. So he saw this from different angles because he was driving around. And the prosecution comes back and says, "But that car was not parked at the CPS building." He said, "Correct." End of testimony. Not sure what that was testimony was trying to do for the defense. And then the next guy came up, Dave McCain, flannel shirt guy. And let me tell you guys, it made me sad to see him. So he's grown up there for the past 25 years. Has been to has lived several places out of the state. Volunteer activity in Carroll County and Delphi. He was the project manager for the trail, and he was a board member for something. So they wanted to know, he said yes, as a child went out there. His brother is also involved in the trail, very familiar. It was investigated by an engineer, and they acquired the bridge. He says he's walked across that bridge many times. and just as recently as a month ago. And he's 79 years old. Now, this sweet man was testifying, and you could tell that he was jolly on the spot with the facts of that bridge, and he knew it front to back. But when it came to remembering what he saw in 2017, he couldn't remember. So they did have to get his deposition out to help refresh his memory. I do believe that with old age, there might be some dementia there, and that made me sad. So, he's in 2017. He said he remembered the day he was on the trail at the High Bridge that day. He got to the trail, not too sure. He believes he was out there for about an hour. And then he said maybe from 2 to 4 p.m. He parked across from Sherry's Lane. We got an education today, you guys. He called it Sherry's Lane, and we were trying to figure out what that was. Then he says Mitch's property. And the defense says, you mean the Mears entrance? And he says, yeah, it's the Mears entrance, but we used to always call it Sherry's Lane or Mitch's property. So now we know that if you hear Sherry's Lane, Mitch's property, it's the Mears entrance. He said that area is 150 acres, and they were trying to acquire it. Building by highway, mulberry tree, and by the cemetery. Said he arrived between 2 and 3 p.m. at Sherry's Lane, parked. There were no other cars, so he walked toward the High Bridge. He says, I think I went straight to the High Bridge. Can't fully remember. Took pics and walked 852 feet across the bridge. And then he said, right over the creek, only went over the water part. And then he said, but I probably walked the whole thing. So he was on the first platform over the water. He says it's 65 feet above the water. You can see it. It's clear. And they asked him about, can you see fish? And he says, I don't know about that. He said he was enjoying the day, wouldn't have been there, but it was an exceptionally warm day. He was using his camera. It was digital, and it had great magnification. And he said he took about less than a half an hour to take pictures. Then he saw two people, a couple, a man and a woman, leaving the bridge. He says, I think they were headed towards the Freedom Bridge. He says, I'm not sure. It was 7 years ago. I vaguely remember these people in the distance. Then he said he was walking more of the trail going west, came up onto the intersection by Sherry's Lane, and he says, I don't remember. I took time taking pics. Turn left to go to the High Bridge, right to the Freedom Bridge, and if you go straight, you go into the Charles Gerard Preserve. And they asked him, "Is that the trail that takes you to the creek?" And he said yes. He's pretty sure he went left before 4 p.m. He was not paying attention to the time. He left and he was surprised at the number of vehicles at Sherry's Lane at the Mears property, and he left to go home. He said he parked, and when he left to go to the left, he said, "I don't know. Sometimes I go right to Wilson's Bridge." There was an objection. And then he says, "Sherry's Lane, anyone on the road?" And he said he did not see any pedestrians on 300 North. He saw a number of people and vehicles at the Mears entrance. He said he was coming off Sherry's Lane and a bunch of people approached him, or he's coming up to Sherry's Lane, and a bunch of people approached him and asked him if he had seen two girls, and he said no. And they said, "You were on the high bridge. Did you hear any sounds, any unusual noises?" And he said no. Once he left, what do you remember? He says that evening in meeting, there was emergency people that came by investigating and said that there was lost children at about 7:30. So he was in a meeting about 7:30 p.m. and some people had come by and said that there had been two girls that were lost. So he said, "I wanted to let them know." So he called the sheriff that and told him that he had been out there that day, and he said that 2 to 3 days later that week, the FBI state police came to his house and the FBI interviewed him. His memory was better back then. He took out the SIM card to his camera and gave it to them. And he said he was interviewed by the investigation team several times. And he said 2 to 3 years later, they brought him in and wanted to know about a car passing by. There was a car in the background on 300 North in one of his pictures. He said he was passing by in distance, and the last time he had spoke to Ellie was 2 to 3 years ago. He said he did not get his SIM card back, and that the state of Indiana never subpoenaed him. The time on the trail was 1 hour, maybe longer. Interviewed by FBI. Did they take notes? Yes. Objection. Received third paragraph. Oh, he read the third paragraph of his depo to refresh his recollection. Did you have a memory of when you arrived and left? He said, "I would hope notes." I would hope notes. One question, writing notes. Do you believe you left at 4 p.m.? And he says, "Arrived at 3 p.m. Did you hear a man shouting going forward from Sherry Lane, coming off of Sherry, across trail on Mitch's property? Bright orange jacket man was wearing. I didn't see his face. Shouted, 'Have you seen two girls?'" He said the impression he had, he was looking for them and concerned. Arrived about 3:15, sounds right. Could have been 2:30, wasn't sure. Wasn't paying attention to details or the time. headed straight when you were leaving, came around. And then they were talking about the camera and where the camera was. And they said, could you have had the camera around your neck? And he said, I could have. So that one was a sweet testimony. I loved hearing all the details about the bridge from Flannel Shirt Guy. Just made me a little sad because he is 79 years old, and you could tell there is some memory loss issues, and knowing that he is that age and that he's been such a big part of this case and that he may not be around for too much longer made me sad. It's little things that I notice about stuff like that. Let's see here. Mimi of 6, thank you so much. I appreciate it. Hey, guilty of crime. Just wanted all of you to know, to those of you who donated for my tent, I did use it last night and it was wonderful. Kept me out of the wind. I got about 5 hours of sleep. But it was great. Okay, next witness was Darnell. I don't know how to spell or pronounce this last name. Stenig. Born and raised in Delphi, class of 85, never moved away. 16 years in a quarry, 18 years in construction. In 1988, he was a Proby firefighter and made his way up the ranks. Chief in 2008 or 2009. So this was all about where the searches were conducted. Okay. This man had a very hard time remembering details. In fact, he got a chuckle out of us because Baldwin would ask him a question and he'd answer it and it wouldn't be the right answer. So Baldwin would be like, maybe we should review your depo and have you read pages, whatever, lines, whatever, to refresh your recollection. And after about the 4th or 5th time of this, he asked another question and the guy said, nope, but why don't you just tell me what page to look at and I'll refresh my recollection? And we all laughed. Okay, so he was told what areas to go search in. And the main purpose of his testimony was the defense was trying to get him to say that when he was out there searching at the bridge, that he saw people searching in the area where the girls were found on the 13th. Well, that didn't work because he said no, he did not see anybody over there. He was talking about exactly where they were searching, what side, what areas, where he saw, and then the big thing from the defense is, where did you see these lights? Where did you see other searchers? And they could not get him to say that he saw anybody searching on the north side where the girls were found at the crime scene. Just looking here. Yeah, he said they searched in the water, inland, everything. The jury said, how long ago did you get your deposition and review it? How long ago did you do your deposition? He said a few weeks ago, and I did not receive a copy of it. Then they wanted to know if he searched the southeast area of the cemetery. Now, these are the juror questions. They're getting the areas right, the directions right, everything. The defense, not so much. And the answer was no. And I put trying to get witness to say there were people searching crime scene area. He couldn't say he saw anyone searching over there. Then the next witness was Steve Mullins. And let me tell you, this one was even worse because Baldwin was doing the questioning and he was trying to hammer Steve Mullins on the fact that isn't documenting things important? When should you document something? When shouldn't you document something? When were the interviews lost? Talking about that, hammering him on that, hammering him on the fact that there was missing evidence that the defense did not get because those interviews disappeared. And there were sidebars, many sidebars on this one. I put jury and judge are not amused. And I said new normal is that trial is going slow. Then he wanted to know, because all these interviews were missing, was there a list drafted on what and who was interviewed, when they were interviewed, that had gone missing? And he said there was a list of people that were interviewed and the dates. Then he got out the hearing, the transcript from the hearing in Fort Wayne. Wanted to know when he started interviewing people at the beginning. Is this the most important? Because early on memories are fresh. Mullins said yes. When did you discover the problem the first time around? And he said in August the problem was discovered. He wanted to know why the interviews were not recreated, and did you go to any person and ask to re-interview them? And he said, I did not. He said, well, you're in charge of the evidence, aren't you? And he said, yes. And he said, he asked him another question, and Mullen came up and said, without looking at notes and researching it, I can't answer that right now. Then he went on about the second batch of interviews that ended up missing, the second group. He said that they had received video, but no audio. April 22nd, 2022. Not sure of a list of people interviewed. Or are you sure that there was a list of people interviewed? And he said, yes. They have all the interviews, but there's no audio to it. They were able to go back and get them somehow. And they're like, how are we supposed to use an interview without sound? And they asked, did you draft a report? And he said, yes. Is there a date on the report? No. isn't it important to data report? And he's like, I made it right away and fixed it. February 2024, given to defense. So they're like, why didn't we receive this information? Why did we have to wait until 2024 February to learn that this information went missing? And he said in all the terabytes of data that they gave the defense in discovery, they thought this information was in there. It wasn't until the defense asked for it and they looked at all that information that they realized it wasn't in there and then provided it to them. Then there were several questions answered with objections because Mullins wouldn't know the answer to it. He would have to speculate what the answer was. So those were sustained. Asked him, do you think if the defense didn't get a report that was sloppy work on your part? I couldn't hear the answer. I wish I could have. And then he said, tape recordings are a way to memorialize suspects, correct? And he said, yes. So he went on the rant of the Brad Weber contact. They called on the phone. He said, did you contact Brad Weber on the phone? I did. Did you tape record it? I did not. They said, why not? And he said, gave it in my report. Did you have a date on that report? Yes, I put a date on the report. Why couldn't you use your cell phone to record the audio on the call? And the answer was, I was using my cell phone at the time. And he said, why didn't you use another audio recorder to record the call? And he said, I don't know why I did it. And then he said, should you have taped it? And I believe he said yes. And then he said, if you could do it all over again, would you have taped it? And he said yes. And he said, the first time you talked to Brad Weber, did he tell you that he went straight home from work? Yes. And he said on August 8th, 2024 was the first time he realized or was told that Brad Weber drove the white van. He said, what other dates? And he says, I don't know. And then they started hounding him about the fact that did Brad Weber say he went straight home, or did he say that he went and did something with the ATMs? There was objections. Were there some conflicting statements from Brad Weber? Yes, some conflicting. Did he have a side job at the time? Yes. He said he drove straight home. What was the side job at the time? Emptying ATM machines. What kind of gun did Brad Weber possess? Sig Sauer. Did you provide the defense with a list of law enforcement that were in the area where the bullet was found? He said, I was not at the scene. I do not know if that list was provided. He said, did you provide the defense with a list of weapons that may have been left at the scene. He said, I don't know. Then he was trying to impeach Mullins on a statement he made a few days ago when he testified for the prosecution. Mullins states that Richard Allen claimed that he never, because he said, Richard Allen interview. Would you agree that R.A. never said he didn't know which way he traveled? Meaning, when they interviewed Richard Allen, Mullins was stating that he said he could have gone one of two ways, through town or through the country roads. And they could not find the exact wording of country roads in any of the depositions. And Mullins read a section of it and said, I assumed he meant the country roads. And then they started to go after him about how many people do you think was involved in this? And he said one. And then he said, well, when did you start believing that? And he said, when Richard Allen was arrested. And they said, well, couldn't there have been multiple people? And he said it didn't matter what he thought. What mattered was what the evidence showed. Then I know that they went through and tried to ask a bunch of questions about Betsy Blair, what time Richard Allen said he was at the bridge, what time he left, and there was a lot of objections through this part. And I put, phrase your questions correctly, because once again, they were not phrasing their questions correctly, and the prosecution was able to object to them and not have those questions answered. Once again, attacking what Betsy Blair and Sarah Carbo saw, and if it was the same person or two different people. I said getting killed with objections again. Asked if there was an Amber Alert issued for the girls. He said, I don't remember. Then he asked how many girls were with Bree Wilbur, and he said 4. Then he asked him, how far is it? How far is it from the creek to down the hill? And Mullins said he didn't measure it. Stated that yes, he's been on the bridge. He's went down the hills to the creek. Says when you go down from the initial hill on the bridge, you go to the private drive, and then you go down another hill, and at the bottom, you're facing the creek. How many feet per each down the hill? He says you might be able to figure out from the topographical maps. Then he was hammering the timeline of the phone and when it stopped counting steps or anything underneath Abby. So this is all about impeaching, trying to show that Mullins is lying, that law enforcement is making errors and mistakes and trying to cover things up. and that they are trying to hide the fact that there could be multiple people involved. Okay, and then the last person to testify today was Tobe Lisenby. And it was very short. He didn't keep him there very long. Told me he was the chief deputy. Prior to this, he was the sheriff. And once again, the questions were all about whether they thought multiple people did it, when they thought that, and why they thought that, and why they changed their mind to it's only one person. And the way that Tobe explained it is the information that they were getting in the beginning when working with the FBI, they were told it could be multiple people. Okay. And then as they started investigating and they were going through what they were finding and then found Richard Allen and got all the details from the crime scene, they knew it was only one person. And they asked both of them, do you believe it's Richard Allen? And they both said yes. That was the end of today's testimony. So now we have court for 3 hours tomorrow. We have a group of individuals that we're taking to the High Bridge after court is over, and we're going to educate them and show them all the areas that they're hearing the testimony about. A lot of these people have never been there. And if they've been there, then they don't know where everything is. So, I'm going to read some comments here. I need a drink. All right. Gosh, don't do that. I thought I had an exclusive. Exclusive on what? Any perception of the jurors, Marv. Okay, so there's a couple jurors that you can see that are really, really focused and taking everything in, taking really specific notes, But then there's a number of them that stone face, can't tell what they're thinking, nothing. So I would have to say it's a 50-50 chance. I personally think that the prosecution has laid out a case now where you could convict him because there's not enough reasonable doubt. We'll know more once the defense gets done and the prosecution can put on their rebuttal case. Maybe they're saving a tiny morsel for the rebuttal case. I don't know. But we'll see. Let's see here. Are you going out tonight? No. I have somebody waiting in line with my chair. I am going to, it's 11:30, so if I go to sleep by midnight, I can get 5 hours of sleep, maybe 6, and be there by 6:30. I agree with you, Squeaky Wheel. That's exactly how I even said it. Throw spaghetti to see what sticks. I see we got some kid joking around going on. Yeah, he did. He said he did it by himself. I don't know. They're both interesting in their own ways. Yeah, it's interesting. Everybody's been asking about the daughter. We're going to have to wait and see. You know, the defense said they had 120 witnesses. We know they're not going to call all 120, and a lot of theirs were duplicates to the prosecution in some ways, but it's going to be interesting to see who gets called tomorrow, who gets called Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, and how many witnesses they're going to put on, and if she will testify. Yep, I noticed that too. The suicide, he does talk about that a lot. All right. I'm going to scroll down to the bottom here. I am very tired. Very, very tired. What do you think about all these witnesses? For the defense, it's like, I don't understand why this person was even called. Oh my God, I do look like a brick wall. That's kind of funny. I don't even know why some of them were called. Makes no sense whatsoever. Sonny, no, they didn't ask how often he went, or he just said that him and his family would take walks, or he would go down and go fishing or mushroom hunting. So I don't know how frequently that was, but along with that and the pictures of the bridge that he had, he definitely knew the area. Don't wear green on a live. Yes, I know. Don't wear green on a live because you look like a brick wall. I don't know. I don't know if she even will testify. I think seeing all of this has got to make her thinking twice. She's got to know that there is evidence against him. But I think she's in so much denial. And like she told me last night, she just wants it to be over with. This has been going on for 2 years. You know, she just wants it over. Well, in about a week and a half, she's going to have her wish. Yep. And I talked to Becky in last night, and so the community has been wonderful. All of my subscribers have been wonderful. There's been many of you that have stopped, asked me if I needed anything, got me coffees, got me food, and I appreciate it so much. While I'm down there and I'm tied to that ramp, that brick, you know. I really appreciate it. And when it's cold out, when it's really cold out, Mike and Becky make sure that we're taking care of there because they know we're out in the elements. So last night they brought us out a big container of chili with crackers and cheese and water bottles, and made sure that we ate something hot so that we didn't freeze. And they stop and they talk to us for a few minutes, and she said, we just want the truth. That is what is most important to them. And I agree with them. We want justice, but we want the truth. And that's what we're looking for, and that's what I hope we're getting. Yeah, that chili was from them. It was good. So I will keep you informed. I'm not going to do a live tomorrow, but I am going to do one on Sunday. And we're going to talk about bullet evidence and some other big things. So I'll try to set that up tomorrow afternoon for Sunday. So keep your eye out on that. Just want to say once again, thank you so much, Paradise City, Coffee for Marv, and Mimi of 6. I appreciate it so much. Thank you to everyone who's donated, supported, sent messages of support and love. That's just as good. I love hearing from all of you, and I'm trying to answer each and every single one of them. But it's a little hard I can't have my phone during the day when I'm in court. So I will continue to try to reach out to you if you've sent me a message, though. For now, I'm going to get off of here and go get some sleep. Everybody have a good night and a great Saturday. And I'll be back Sunday with an update from Saturday and some really neat information about that bullet evidence. I'll see you later. Bye. Thank you for watching Beyond the Evidence. Today, I gave you my own opinions and analysis, but I always encourage you to do your own research and form your own conclusions. If you're interested in true crime and want to join me on this journey of discovery, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell icon so you don't miss any of my uploads. If you'd like to support the channel, join our membership, and if you have any suggestions for cases that you want me to cover, feel free to leave them in the comments below. Thank you for watching, and remember, justice matters. This is Beyond the Evidence, and I'll see you in the next video.